Maria Brooks had always found solace in the forest. The woods, with their dappled sunlight and soft rustling of leaves, offered her an escape from the relentless pace of everyday life. On that warm Sunday, after a delightful lunch with her family, she felt an irresistible pull toward nature. As was her custom, she grabbed her trusty water bottle, slid on her earphones to catch her favorite podcast, and attached a familiar leash to her loyal dog, Baxter. Today, she thought, would be no different. A simple, rejuvenating walk amidst the trees. But fate had other plans. The day had started like any other. Maria's morning had been filled with the comforting hum of domestic life, punctuated by laughter and the clinking of dishes at the family table. Yet, as she prepared for her daily escape, a news report on the television sent a chill through her. A young woman had gone missing in a nearby town, and the distress on the reporter's face stirred a deep empathy within her. For a fleeting moment, her heart pounded in concern for the missing woman's family, but the call of the forest was too strong. With a determined sigh, Maria set out, urging Baxter along the familiar path that led toward the dense expanse of the woods. At first, the journey was as serene as ever. Baxter trotted happily by her side, tongue lolling in contentment, while Maria soaked in the beauty of sunlit clearings and towering trees. The path, a narrow ribbon of earth winding between ancient trunks, seemed to hum with a quiet promise of peace. Yet, as they ventured further in, the forest began to change. The light waned, swallowed by an encroaching darkness that settled among the gnarled branches. A subtle unease crept over Maria, a sense that the woods, usually so inviting, were holding their breath. Her thoughts drifted to the scream she had heard just moments earlier, a sound so raw and desperate that it still reverberated in her ears. It was as if the forest had whispered a warning, urging her to be cautious. Maria's pulse quickened. She hesitated at a fork in the trail, her mind racing with possibilities. Should she call the police? Should she turn back? Yet, in that frozen moment, her feet betrayed her. They carried her forward, deeper into a realm where every shadow seemed to hide secrets. The once familiar path now felt alien and foreboding. Thick trees pressed close, their twisted limbs forming an archway that blocked the sunlight. Baxter's usual cheerful barking had quieted, replaced by a low, uneasy growl. Maria's heart sank as an acrid stench invaded her senses, a smell so foul and penetrating that it forced her to pause. The odor was overpowering, a blend of decay and something else she couldn't quite place, like rotting refuse mingled with a hint of something far more sinister. Maria's stomach churned as she clutched her water bottle for support. The smell grew stronger with every step, and soon it became almost tangible, a taste in the back of her throat that threatened to overwhelm her. Desperate to escape the nauseating aroma, she veered off the main trail, hoping to outpace the stench. Baxter tugged at the leash, his hackles rising in alarm, and Maria felt a knot of dread tighten in her chest. After a few cautious steps, she noticed an odd object nestled in the long, overgrown grass of a small clearing off the path. It was partially obscured by wild ferns, but as she approached, its true form became chillingly clear, an animal crate, battered and stained, abandoned in the middle of nowhere. Maria's breath caught in her throat. The crate was not intact. A heavy chain lay on the ground beside it, and a deep, jagged bite mark marred one of its sides. The sight stirred grim memories of whispered rumors about illegal exotic animal trade in the region. What had been locked inside this crate? And how had it ended up so far from any semblance of civilization? Her mind raced with unsettling possibilities, but instinct urged her to move on. Shaking off the grim vision, Maria decided to continue her walk, her thoughts clouded by a lingering sense of foreboding. The nauseating smell began to dissipate, and she clung to the hope that the forest's normal sweet scents would soon return. Baxter, ever the loyal companion, tried to distract her by chasing after a stray stick that lay in her path. His antics briefly lifted her spirits, coaxing a small smile from her lips even as her intuition whispered that danger might still be lurking in the shadows. But the calm was short-lived. As she scanned the path ahead, a sudden movement caught her eye, a man pacing nervously in the middle of the woods. His expression was etched with anxiety, and he appeared to be constantly glancing over his shoulder, as if expecting someone or something to appear at any moment. Maria's heart pounded harder as she crouched behind a large oak tree, watching the stranger. Baxter's low growl deepened, and Maria instinctively pulled him close. Who was this man? What was he running from? Or perhaps, what was he hiding? Minutes stretched into an eternity until, without warning, the man bolted, sprinting into the dense darkness. Maria's breath hitched as she contemplated the implications of his sudden departure. Was he connected to the mysterious crate? Could he be responsible for the disturbing scream she had heard earlier? These questions tormented her, but before she could formulate a plan, another sound shattered the uneasy silence, a muffled, agonizing scream that seemed to emanate from somewhere nearby. Maria's legs trembled, but she knew she could not ignore the cry for help. With Baxter leading the way, she followed the sound, which led her to a shallow ditch obscured by fallen leaves and dirt. The opening was unassuming, yet the desperate sound emanating from within was impossible to ignore. Maria knelt by the edge, her heart in her throat, and peered into the murky depths. What she saw made her blood run cold. At the bottom of the ditch, tangled in a labyrinth of muddy rabbit holes, something large and desperate struggled for freedom. The sound of whimpering and muffled cries reached her ears, and she could just make out the shape of fur, dark and matted with mud. It was the unmistakable figure of an animal in distress, an animal whose plight pulled at the depths of her compassion. Without a moment's hesitation, Maria retrieved her phone and dialed emergency services. The operator's calm assurance that help was on the way did little to ease the pounding in her chest. She stayed by the ditch, anxiously scanning the area, willing the rescuers to arrive quickly before the creature's suffering worsened. Nearly 30 minutes later, the sound of approaching voices and the rumble of a rescue truck broke the eerie quiet. A team of firemen and volunteers assembled at the scene, their expressions grim as they assessed the situation. Maria watched from a safe distance as 2 firemen cautiously climbed down into the muddy ditch, their movements deliberate and careful. The rescuers worked methodically, their efforts focused on extricating the animal without causing further harm. As they cleared away the layers of caked mud, a heart-wrenching sight emerged. A large, quivering sheepdog, half submerged in water and trapped in a web of muddy rabbit holes. The dog's eyes were wide with terror, its body trembling in the cold, unyielding grip of the muck. Maria's heart ached at the sight. It was clear that the poor creature had been suffering for far too long. The rescuers quickly set to work, devising a makeshift pulley system to lift the stranded dog out of its entrapment. A rope was thrown down, and the team tied it carefully around the animal's torso, preparing for a concerted effort to free it. The process was painstaking and fraught with difficulty. The dog, heavy and disoriented, refused to budge, despite their relentless tugging and the coordinated efforts of the team. For what felt like an eternity, every muscle in the rescuer's arms strained against the stubborn mass of mud and despair. At last, after nearly 2 grueling hours of careful digging, pulling, and coaxing, the rescuers managed to liberate the dog. The creature was hoisted to safety, and relief washed over Maria as she rushed forward to comfort it. Yet, even in that moment of triumph, questions lingered. What had led this dog to be trapped so deeply in the woods? Was it connected in any way to the mysterious crate or the suspicious man she had seen earlier? As the firemen gently cleaned and examined the rescued animal, they explained that they had no clear answer. The dog appeared to have been abandoned, left to struggle in a network of muddy holes, possibly for days. Its condition was dire. The poor creature was diagnosed with morbid obesity, a factor that not only had made it difficult for the dog to free itself, but had also put immense strain on its joints. There were also signs that it might be suffering from mild PTSD, a heartbreaking consequence of its prolonged ordeal. The rescuers decided to call the local humane society, and soon the dog was whisked away for further care. Over the following days, Maria found herself unable to shake the image of the trembling animal from her mind. Despite its initial wariness, the dog, soon affectionately nicknamed Semi for its endearing, rotund appearance, slowly began to trust the gentle touch and kind words of Maria, who visited daily. Each visit brought small victories. One afternoon, after weeks of cautious progress, Semi allowed Maria to pet him without recoiling, a silent promise that he was ready to embrace the love he had long been denied. In that tender moment, all of Maria's fears and unanswered questions faded into the background. She realized that Semi deserved more than a life of neglect and abandonment. More than that, he deserved a family, a home filled with warmth and understanding. Over time, Maria's concern for the mysterious events in the woods gave way to a determination to provide Semi with a fresh start. With the support of the local rescue organization, she began the process of adopting him. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, a silent testament to the resilience of trust and compassion. Maria often wondered about the strange occurrences that had marked that fateful day: the abandoned crate, the unsettling man in the forest, the scream that had led her to the ditch. Yet, in her heart, she chose to focus on the bright future that lay ahead for both of them. In the weeks and months that followed, Maria and Semi built a new life together. The once fearful woman found solace not only in the familiar trails of the woods, but also in the quiet, everyday moments of caring for her new friend. Each day, as Semi grew stronger and more playful, Maria felt a deep sense of gratitude. Though the woods had revealed their dark secrets that day, they had also led her to the one soul who needed her help the most. As the seasons changed, Maria often reflected on that fateful walk, a day marked by terror, mystery, and unexpected rescue. It had transformed her perspective, teaching her that sometimes the darkest paths can lead to the brightest new beginnings. And while the forest still held its secrets and shadows, Maria knew that with love and determination, even the deepest scars could eventually give way to hope. In the end, the haunting echoes of that day in the woods became a powerful reminder for Maria that every creature, no matter how broken or abandoned, deserves a chance at a better life. With Semi by her side, she embraced this truth wholeheartedly, vowing to always listen to the whispers of the woods and to her own intuition, no matter how unsettling they might be. And so, beneath the shifting canopy of ancient trees, Maria and Semi walked on, leaving behind the remnants of fear and despair, and stepping into a future filled with promise, healing, and the gentle power of compassion.